Welcome to the InGeneral podcast. My name is Jack, and I am joined by Christopher. Hello, Chris.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's not too bad. This is podcast 98. We are rapidly approaching number 100.
We don't have plans for number 100 yet. We really should get on that.
We still don't have plans.
This podcast is weird because we are recording it out of order. So
Yeah.
we've already recorded the meat of the podcast. We just haven't introduced it and we haven't signed it off. So now we just gotta do that part.
We're faking a real pod. That's what's happening. But there are a few things to mention.
Yeah.
There are a few things to mention. So first off, I would like to mention that if you check out our TeePublic store, we currently have a sale up to 30% off. Check that out. Get the holiday deals in. You may know that there are supply chain issues with quotation marks globally. So check it out. Get your Christmas orders in soon. Christmas/holiday orders. Some people don't celebrate Christmas, but they still celebrate the holidays. So enjoy. And today on this episode, last week, month, 2 weeks ago. When do we? Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. You may remember that we announced a giveaway. You could win the opportunity to win.
Allow myself to introduce myself.
Yeah, so you could win Aftermath game codes part 1 and 2. Now, obviously, we understand it is a bit of a niche contest. Not everybody has an Oculus headset. I do not have an Oculus headset, whereas Christopher James Pugh does have an Oculus headset.
Not my name.
But he's not going to win. He's not going to win. Richards isn't going to win. But welcome. Yeah, Chris, what's new in the world of Jurassic? Before we announce this giveaway, what is new?
What is new? Well, no, I mean, since the last time we talked, there was already the Camp Cretaceous 5-second season 4 announcement teaser. We still don't have a teaser or a trailer. I have a theory, and we'll see if it holds true. My theory is because this podcast is dropping in the next day or so from us recording this, right? In theory,
today.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Really quick turnaround. So my theory is then the trailer might drop next week. The teaser trailer for season 4 might drop next week because Jurassic World Evolution 2 comes out next week. And it's not that I think that those two products tie into one another or the stories or anything like that. It's really just more about brand synergy, get Jurassic in the headlines and keep it in the headlines. So you got Evolution 2 on Tuesday and maybe the trailer will drop on a Friday or something like that. I don't know. It's totally baseless, but the way that I figure is we're looking at that and we're getting into teaser trailer season for Dominion. So we typically, if we follow past patterns, are going to look at the week of Thanksgiving upwards to the first week of December, that small little window of time. And so that's where you would typically get your first trailer. So I think one of two things are going to happen. We're going to get our teaser trailer for Dominion in that window. Or if ultimately that IMAX footage isn't in the film, I could see them releasing that online during that window in lieu of a teaser trailer. And then our teaser trailer will just sort of, I don't know, maybe we'll get one. But otherwise, I think that we probably end up waiting until February.
So it's interesting, isn't it, regarding that the prehistoric scene is that we still don't know if it's in the movie or not. Last we heard, we don't think it is, but not sure entirely. So if they release it online, we know that it's not in the movie.
Yeah, I don't think they'd put it online months and months and months in advance if it's in the movie.
No.
It'd be one thing if it's a week or two before the film, but that far in advance, I just don't see that being the case. So I think that that's sort of going to give us, the answer on a few things. If that comes out, we're probably going to have to wait till typical big trailer, big game spot time, which is the Super Bowl, for the trailer. But if that doesn't,
and there is always a Super Bowl trailer for Jurassic, isn't there? Mm-hmm. Judging by the first two, Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom.
I mean, on top of that, we've been talking dates for a while. I mean, we had the opportunity to we had received some information. That's how we knew when Camp Cretaceous was going to be in December. That's how we knew season 5 was going to be in July after Dominion. And originally, here's the weird part. Originally, it said the first teaser trailer for Dominion would be August, and then we were surprised with the IMAX preview in June. And then the thing is then it said the next trailer would be February. So, that's sort of that weird part. Obviously some things changed there, but I think February is a very good spot to look at. But all the same, I think that we'll get something. We have to get something this month. Because it is
Yeah, so you
officially
think there'll be a
November.
teaser trailer for Camp Cretaceous, and you think it will? Do you think the teaser trailer
No, there's
will?
got to be a teaser trailer this month for Camp Cretaceous, no doubt. They're not gonna just
I
like
guess yeah,
stealth it
December
off the
3rd, right?
season.
They can't
Yeah.
teaser on December 1st, but you think it'll be a teaser trailer that does reveal the new location, or at least reveals what the island is, or do you think they're still going to keep that under wraps?
I mean, I don't know how you can keep it entirely under wraps. I'm thinking the deserty location is like the real meat of the season, and I think that they put that in that little like sizzle announcement type thing so that people don't get their expectations set for like an entire season set on Sorna or whatever. So I think that whatever the first location is, it's like more of like a pit stop to like the real meat of the season. So I wouldn't be surprised if the teaser trailer kind of just immediately alludes to like where they first end up and like why they're there, and then like, oh, stuff's going on. And then I think they might keep like how, why, and where that desert location is. I think they might try to keep that under tighter wraps.
I think they can with that, because the only thing we have to go on that is complete assumption. You know, that desert location is not something we can guess. I mean, we can assume. We can say it's potentially
we have made plenty of guesses.
We've made plenty of guesses, plenty of assumptions, but we cannot say for certain, because it's technically a brand new location to the franchise, visually at least, unless it's Atacama Desert of Chile, which was explored in the live tour. But, you know, not many people... I guess not many people. I don't know. A lot of people did get to see that, but I haven't seen that. A lot of people haven't seen that.
I mean, a lot of people didn't. It basically COVID happened based in like the first part of its run. So I think like only like the East Coast saw it, and then basically it just sort of stopped.
It's been postponed until then, right? But it's
I want to
back
say like
now,
I
or
want
is
to
it
say it was
coming back?
touring for. I want to say it was like touring for like a month and a half before COVID happened. And, so like nobody really got to see that thing. No, they haven't even officially announced it, but we've heard that it should be back next year. I hope that stays true, because we're getting into the time period that we should start hearing about it, and we haven't heard about it. So
right.
We'll see. But I think that it's worth. I think it's worth bringing back for sure. And honestly, there's a really, Colin Trevorrow went on record to say it's not really canon; it's soft canon. Well, maybe this downtime was enough time to re-examine the script and figure out what needed to change to make it soft canon to hard canon. I don't know. Just
it would be quite exciting. This probably can't happen, but it would be quite exciting if they change live to when it reopens. All of a sudden, ties in with season 4, and you've got Camp Cretaceous kids there. You've got Ben. That
would be such a big change. I mean,
I know.
I think that if anything would change, it just might be like a few like little dates or this and that's like just to make it align a little bit more. The other thing is like obviously the action you're seeing on screen or like in person isn't entirely canon to the events, but the real question is the summary of the plot canon. I think people understand that the live tour medium is embellishing some of the action and some of the way things play out because it's a live stage show. Like, that's not exactly the way it's playing out, obviously, if it were canon. So the real question is the summary of the plot, canon? And I think that would be great if we could get to a point where it's like, yeah, the summary of the plot definitely is canon. There absolutely is a, location in the Atacama Desert. There absolutely were other raptors on Nublar. There was a Troodon training program. I would have loved if Camp Cretaceous would have acknowledged that.
Well, it certainly isn't the first, the live tour isn't the first time that we now all of a sudden are learning that there were new or different velociraptors on Nublar in Jurassic World's run. Aftermath, yeah, exactly. That has all new raptors. Blue isn't even in that, I believe, right?
Yeah. No, I haven't played part 2. Part 1 ends with you being tasked to get Blue's DNA. So I don't know if you actually see Blue or if you just
want to know.
Yeah, right. Or I think you just might go to the facility where it's stored, because I think like that's what we was saying. Like, oh, I've got her DNA is on lockdown, blah blah blah. Mills needs that. If you can get that, I can secure your rescue. That type of deal.
Sure. Well, it's going to be interesting, and I think November's going to be a really interesting month for Jurassic. Some big things will probably end up dropping, like the Camp Cretaceous trailer, teaser, whatever. Something's going to come this month, as Chris said.
Yeah, like I said,
And
I think we'll get that in the second week in November. So next week, I
ooh,
think it just makes sense because
it
then this
does.
sort of puts enough time. If we're getting something for Jurassic World Dominion towards the end of the month, it puts enough time between those where like you sort of pace it out in a healthy way.
Yeah, it would make
So
sense to drop anything Dominion related after the season drops for Camp Cretaceous. Give people time to watch Camp Cretaceous, let them chill out a little bit, and then all of a
well, I
sudden
just don't.
smash them in the face with some
We'll see
Jurassic
though.
World Dominion news.
We'll see though. I'm not sure if that's gonna play out like that. To be honest with you, because we're not getting Camp Cretaceous until December, and Jurassic World's marketing is more like the typical marketing, so that would mean November rather than December. So we'll see.
True.
But anyhow,
It's all
we're
got mixed
looking.
up this year, hasn't it? It's very
Yeah,
weird. But I
but
know
if we're following patterns, I feel like we'll see something between Thanksgiving week and the first week of December.
sure.
And
And,
I
I,
I,
and
ho-
I'm
I hope that's a teaser trailer. I really do hope that that's like a proper teaser trailer.
Yeah, yeah. I hope so too. And I hope whatever if they do end up releasing something for Dominion, I hope it's not very spoilery. I hope it's not a trailer that reveals too much about the movie because we're still a little bit far away. But also,
Yeah, I
if
feel like
they
we're too soon
drop
for a trailer like
a
that.
yeah, yeah, and if they drop a Super Bowl trailer, then I hope that too isn't crazy. But
Just like an
I would
entire plot
imagine
outline.
yeah, yeah, and the ending
Yeah.
and
Well, I
plans for
mean,
the sequels.
well, you joke, but like that is very much the Universal Pictures marketing.
Mhm.
I honestly, out of like the big, like kind of the big players, I think Universal cuts like some of the worst trailers for the franchise films. To be honest with you, they basically it's like they don't know how to make a trailer, so they just outline the entire plot and try to show you like a sampling of each major set piece. That is how
I
it's
mean,
been with
most
Jurassic.
studios do cut trailers like that nowadays. That's the thing. Like that seems to be the
Yeah, but
Hollywood way. Oh, you want to go
you
see this
know,
film? Here's the entire movie, so you can decide whether or not you
You know
want
what
to.
I can say though is at least the Marvel films normally don't go that route, and at least it seems like Disney's
Well, they
do.
don't need to
This,
now. They have a
yeah,
pre-established audience. The same people go see those movies every
but
single time. Like they will
but they cut
outsell.
really good trailers. I mean, the Marvel movie trailers aren't as good as the Star Wars trailers, but like the Star
Yeah,
Wars
Star Wars
trailers,
trailers always nail
they
it.
cut really good trailers. Like they're
Not even a
very
Star Wars guy. I watched the trailer for the Boba Fett one, and I was like, you know what? That looks fucking sick. That looks so
they're
good.
really well crafted. Yeah, no, they know what they're doing. And honestly, yeah, I watched the Boba Fett one earlier today, and I was like, I would not be surprised if everything we saw in that is from the first episode.
Yeah, most likely. I mean,
It feels
but
like it's the establishing premise of what the character thinks going to happen. So it's
is it a
establishing what
mini-series or is it
it's like.
like
Yeah, it's a
a
limited series. I don't think
limited?
it's
Okay.
like yeah. So it's going to be I think
Oh, could
one
you
season.
imagine? Oh, Jurassic needs something like that.
Hmm.
It really does.
Oh my
But
god, yeah.
speaking of Jurassic World Aftermath, let's announce and let's pick a winner for these game codes. So the contest was all you have to do is give a comment. You have to like and subscribe on the InGeneral podcast channel. If you haven't figured it out by now, stop trying and get the hell out of here. But we have a brand new channel for the InGeneral podcast where you can get the pod and everything else related to it. Yeah, go subscribe to that so you don't miss an episode. If you listened on YouTube, they will no longer be on the Jurassic Outpost channel. But, okay, so all of the comments, we have checked. Everybody that commented, we've checked to see if they're subscribed. And can't check if you've liked it, but there's 24 comments and 34 likes. So I'm going to make an assumption that we're covered there. So we have put everybody's name into a random generator. And I'm just going to select one at random. Just somebody that... okay. Sorry, no. I said I'm going to select one at random. I'm going to press the button and let the thing select at random.
Hopefully, there's a person with an Oculus.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I was reading some of the comments, and I was like, well, all these people are saying, I'm really excited to play it. I'm like, I'm hoping you have an Oculus headset because you can't otherwise. But if you don't, then when the game codes are gifted to you, email Oculus and be like, I have game codes. I have no headset.
That or let us know if you can't. If you're really not gonna be able to play it, let us know. Give us the code back, and maybe we can arrange some sort of consolation, something.
Yeah, we can give you something.
We got some stuff.
I'm looking around the room. Maybe some Beyond the Gates stuff. We'll give you some Beyond the Gates toys that we don't want anymore. But okay, cool. Let's do this. So I have entered all these
Mark,
names.
Box back there.
We'll put that in. Okay. Where is it? Okay. Are you ready, Chris? I'm going to hit the button.
Oh, I'm ready.
And spin.
Spin that wheel.
Okay, and the name it has come up with is Arotodomato. Okay, let me
All
try to find
right.
that. Let me try to find that comment. So if your YouTube name is Arotodomato, Aroto, ARROTO, Domato.
What was their comment on?
I'm trying to find that comment now. But if that was your username on YouTube, you won. Wow.
Let's see what the winning comment was.
Their winning comment.
I hope it's like just a really sloppy comment.
Fuck you guys. You imagine. No, the comment I found it is another great one, guys. Okay, cool. Thank you. Well, I hope you entered the contest willingly. And that wasn't just a normal comment. Let us know. Get in touch with us. Head to JurassicOutpost.com/contact. Just go on the main page. You'll find some contact info, or just DM us on one of the socials, and we will link you up with your codes.
And yeah, if you can't play it and you don't think you have an Oculus, maybe we can like get you a mega egg, a captive's mega egg.
Yeah, we'll get you something, and you can give those codes up, and we'll do another contest. But yeah, there we go. So the winner is. What did I say? What was the name? There we go. Arotodomato. Congratulations, my man. You have won. Also, his...
And apologies if we're not pronouncing that right.
His profile picture on YouTube is Barney Gumble. So...
All right.
That's always good. Okay. So what else? Before we jump in, we have a special guest today. His name is Brent. He is a avid Jurassic fan, but was also in Jurassic World. He was an extra in that scene. He was an extra in the lab and in the main street running scene, the Pteranodon attack, Dimorphodon attack scene. We talked to him, and that deep. Will be... we go pretty deep into...
No,
do you know what? It was actually...
We cover some good ground. And it's funny because we go a little, we get into some rants, we talk about our opinions, but no, he's able to provide some really cool context about like some of the props that you might not have seen or heard about. We talk a little bit about some of the things that are in the gift shop or the different stores and whatnot, and just some of the deeper lore elements that existed. It's really fascinating conversation. Not to mention our conversations about the films and our Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah. Whenever we have a guest on, we have to ask them what their view of Fallen Kingdom was, because that is the bad one. Okay, it's fact. No, but it was great talking to Brent, and because as Chris said, he was in Jurassic World, so it was almost nostalgic, bringing up origins of the original podcast. He was a listener to our podcast back when Jurassic World was filming. And he was actually there on set, so it was really cool talking about all that. I kind of forgotten that. Oh yeah, they used the NASA set to film some of it. And just I don't know. It was just cool. Very cool conversation.
It was really fun reminiscing. It's weird. It's weird that there's enough time between now and like the lead up to Jurassic World to be nostalgic for that time period, because that also feels so recent, and it's kind of freaky how fast time has flown by.
Right.
To be honest,
it's a little bit weird, isn't it? It's a little bit weird.
It's a little freaky. But anyhow, we talk about a lot. He also has a lot of great insight into VR games, and that is because he independently develops VR games, and we go into detail about that. Yeah. So it's a really great conversation, and we cover a lot of ground.
So we'll jump into that shortly, but first, Chris, tell me, Evolution 2, are you now excited?
Yeah, Evolution 2 comes out in about a week from now. And we will have a lot of coverage. We'll have a lot to talk about when that game drops. So stay tuned for our review and other content exploring any potential story elements or anything like that from the game. We'll definitely have a lot to say, and I'm excited to talk about it. And I think that it's a game that a lot of people are looking forward to, and it's a game that a lot of people are curious about. And we'll have more to say next week. Once it is released and we can talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, let's jump into our interview with Brent. Brent, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, guys. It's awesome to be here. Like we were saying before, 7 years coming. So you guys have been around forever. It's awesome to finally join up.
It is weird to think the InGeneral podcast began as the JurassicWorld.org podcast, right, Chris? And that was what?
Was it the JurassicWorld.org? Yeah. InGeneral was like when we swapped over to Outpost, and no. I can't believe it's been that long.
I know, it's so weird. But Brent, so you were in Jurassic World. You were Dr. Ryan Crest.
I was. It was an amazing experience, a once in a lifetime type of thing. So, as a fan, since the beginning, since the first movie, it was just so amazingly cool to do. And I also got to be there for all of the Main Street stuff as well. So any of the attack on Main Street or just kind of general milling about of the park. So super.
So how
cool
did that
stuff.
all come about? You just applied, right? And this was filming in New Orleans.
Yes. So back then, I was on Dan's JP3 page a lot.
Yes.
Then yes, and somebody on there actually just posted an open casting call and just decided to do it. I was living in California at the time, right out of college. I went to school for filmmaking, and big part because of Jurassic Park, and was working out there at the time. I just went, I'm in the industry, I might as well try. And I sent over my resume and a picture, and they got back to me. It was crazy. From there, I had to figure out how to get from California to Louisiana to do everything, but it was well worth doing.
Yeah, no, seriously.
That will always be one of my regrets that I didn't do that. It was one of those things that I considered doing, and I'm like, can I really make this work, or is it really like worth applying when I don't live in Louisiana? I live in Pennsylvania. And, to this day, I'm like, damn it.
I actually, I made some friends that, were part of the community too. Justin Main, I don't know if you guys have ever interacted with him, but he came down from Detroit. And then I also met another one or two people from, I'm blanking on the name of the older website, but the Jurassic, I can't remember it, but it was the big website.
Legacy?
Legacy, JP Legacy. There you go. I met a few friends from there as well. And, it was everybody was like, should we do this? Should we not? Like, are they even going to have us? And it did work out. It was cool. So, if they're ever in the States again, Chris, you got to try.
Yeah, no, I've already kind of determined that if it's in the States, or if it's in the States, I'm definitely gonna. No matter where it is,
there's no excuse, Chris.
There's really no excuse. I mean, I'd rather work on it rather than like be in it. Yeah. But either way, being around it, something like that.
So what was the deal in New Orleans? They had two different sets, right? They had the Main Street set that was from memory in the abandoned theme park, amusement park. And then they also had something in a NASA building or something like that, right?
Exactly. I think, Chris,
it wasn't. So they had Main Street, then I think separate from Main Street, then they had the Mosasaur Arena, and then didn't they have the Jurassic Park ruins? Was that in the NASA facility?
They did. So sadly, I didn't get to see the inside of the Innovation Center, but that was in the same complex of buildings that the lab was in, and next door to the lab they had the Jurassic World Innovation Center set, which I also got to see. I didn't actually do any of the work there. And then, yes, as you said, Jack, the new the outside park stuff was shot at Six Flags. The
Six Flags, that was it. Yeah, I remember that. That was the first time I'd ever heard of Six Flags. I had no idea what it was.
Oh, really?
Being from Britain, I didn't know what it was. Yes, I was like, "What the hell is a Six Flags car park?" What does that mean?
What's really funny is originally the intent and the reason why they even booked that was they wanted to go inside of the park and build the park inside of the park and use a lot of the pre-existing rides and structure and sort of build like new facades on them. But then as they looked at it, I guess it was just like kind of dangerous in there with like wild boars and snakes and everything like that. And they looked at it and it was like kind of so run down and it would require so much customization that they ultimately backtracked and they're like, we're just going to build it out in the parking lot from scratch and we're not going to use the inside of the park, because the original intent was to build it inside the park and even have a roller coaster in frame, because then they wanted to build a roller coaster in Universal Parks, which now eventually has happened, but it nearly happened a few times. But their idea was to have a roller coaster in frame to prelude to the Universal Parks getting a Jurassic Park roller coaster. It was one of those weird things like
they knew Frank that early.
Frank Marshall wanted that. It was a big Frank Marshall thing. But ultimately, because there was going to be an Amber Mine roller coaster back then. It was going to be more of a themed dark ride roller coaster.
I remember.
And
Isn't that why we called that series of videos the Amber Mine News? Because we'd heard it or something. We were like, let's get to it.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, Universal Parks really keeps cheaping out on Jurassic, and they kind of keep giving away the good stuff to the other properties. So I feel like Jurassic's got the short end of the stick. Velocicoaster looks like a great coaster, but an awful Jurassic ride. But that's another story altogether.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
so did you go inside the NASA building? What was it that was being shot in there? Sorry.
Yes, we did. So that had the actual labs. So any of the stuff I did, as far as that, was at the NASA building. But they were sharing a space with the Innovation Center itself. So the inside of the main building, it did connect in the film, but they were, obviously filmed in separate areas and then digitally kind of pieced together. But we got to eat lunch inside the Innovation Center essentially, and then we would film in the labs. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. And so can during the lab sequence, I know that there's photography on the official website that you're in as Dr. Ryan Crest. Can you actually see you in the film in the lab?
Yeah. So I'm definitely in there. I mean, the first shot I'm in is Claire's walking down the hallway, and she's, pitching the dinosaurs, saying kids aren't, as interested as they used to be. And it's actually, as she's delivering that line in the foreground, there's like a really big tuft of hair. And that's my tuft of hair. And it goes through frame. And, what was wild about that was like Colin actually came up to me for that shot and like directed my like performance, in a very small way, but told me like what to be doing at the table and all this stuff. So, me being like, camera's right behind me, this is going to be awesome. When I see this movie, I'm going to like at least be in this part. And then, it's just this big, real close up. But I am in the background in plenty of other shots. In the lab, it's always kind of very quick and you miss it. I can try to share some stuff on Twitter if people want to see, but
I mean, that's so great though that you grew up as a Jurassic fan like all of us, and then by the time Jurassic Park 4 came around, you were in it. You got that experience. That
it was so cool. And outside of just the lab too, I mean, obviously all of us wanted to get chased by dinosaurs. So doing the Main Street attack was really the real culmination of my childhood dreams, right? Like dipping and diving and going, and it was so cool.
That's like all the making ofs of Jurassic Park, Lost World, JP3, when there's just like people running from nothing. Did it feel like that kind of making of?
It so much was, and they didn't really prepare us for some of the like tricks they were doing, camera wise. They actually had stunt performers in spandex green outfits that were acting as some of the different Dimorphodons, Pteranodons, and they were like jumping on stunt performers, and they had stunt performers tumbling off balconies, and it was a big production. There's a lot of CGI in the movies, but there also was a lot of practical, at least stunt work going on. Like even if you don't notice it, I love watching those scenes because there is so much going on, just tiny in the background, where like maybe somebody falls over like a stroller or goes off a balcony, and like they don't focus on it, but it's there, and it was happening practically on set, which was pretty cool.
It does show they did a lot of in camera, like you said, it's like a lot of like destruction and whatnot. It's had like a lot of like this and that's happening all throughout the frame, and it really does show, and it really does add to it, because most of the time, I mean, CG can be indistinguishable, but a lot of times in these types of films, it's kind of easy to tell when it's CG, just because of how complex the scenes are, and everything doesn't really get the attention and detail that it maybe needs. So it really shows when it's in camera, and it does help, and you can tell it's there. There's a really strong basis of practicality there.
Exactly. And, at the time, I did listen to some very old episodes before joining you guys today, and I was reminiscing on, all of what could have been right back then. And a lot of it was like, how many animatronics are we going to see? I could remember like being on the plane, like heading there, like, oh, what am I going to find? That obviously as fans of the franchise, like dreaming of seeing these full-size creatures built out. Obviously ended up being a little disappointed there, but I got to see their heads on sticks and, stuff like that. So that was cool.
I assume that'd be the Dimorphodon and Pteranodon then that you saw?
I did. So they had the smaller ones that were painted up, and then they had for the Pteranodons the full size but unpainted heads, and those were really cool to see. but sadly, no full dinos.
No full animatronics. We really did think as well the Indominus breakout scene when the Indominus rips apart the worker that's in the cage with them. We all thought when we were going through the trailer that was 100% animatronic. Has to be an animatronic. Look how good it looks.
All that. Oh yeah, and it did. It really did.
Looks sharp, and then it behaves a lot like an animatronic because it's not moving forward. It's just it's standing stationary and then doing a task, which is very really on point, like an animatronic. Which animals do that also. So it was just one of those things. We're like, oh yeah, that's got to be, because at that point we were naive and we're like, yeah, there's gonna be animatronics. That's Jurassic Park's legacy. It's its history. Yeah. It's gonna be filled with animatronics, but then
Jurassic World was a weird one, I guess, in that sense. It was after such a long gap. We know that ILM didn't necessarily feel too confident with it, so it wasn't. And I guess the studio as well, they're like, well, we can do it all CG, so we wouldn't.
Well, it's one of those things like they originally intended for animatronics, and then the studio just sort of kind of like time and money kind of got in the way of that. But the original intent was 4 raptor heads, obviously for when they're inside the cage, a T-Rex head and neck, a Indominus head and neck, and I want to say maybe 1 full raptor, as well as then obviously the Apatosaur, and then things just kept getting massively scaled down. But like Legacy Effects originally had built out bids and plans, and there's a reason why Legacy had done a lot of some of the early work, because they were going to be more involved, and then unfortunately at the final hour things kind of kept getting scaled back. It's a shame as
well. Like if you look at the franchise now, Fallen Kingdom, they introduced more animatronics, and then obviously in Dominion we know that it's full of animatronics. But the issue is for Fallen Kingdom they moved the movie's production base to the UK. So like the people that did work at Stan Winston Studios and the people that went on and are now in Legacy, I mean, it didn't really make too much sense. That's why they got bids and they, ended up going with other teams, Neil Scanlon's team. But it is a shame because those Legacy people that were on the originals would probably be very beneficial on the animatronic teams. But so was it, when you were filming, very long days? How long were you in New Orleans?
So the first set, which was the Main Street stuff, I was on set for 5 different days. Each one was, roughly 12 hours. That's the general kind of rule for a film set, maybe a little bit more, but honestly, they flew by. So they were long days, but they were well worth the time. I like I mentioned earlier, I was young when I went and did it. I was right out of college, and I was getting paid to be an extra isn't a lot of money, so you're there on your own dime and you're trying to make it work. So I flew in, on a red eye. I got in at like 1 a.m. to try to avoid hotel fees and like rental cars, and I stayed at the airport overnight. I actually listened to you guys. I was sitting in the airport like for 5 hours waiting for the rental car company to like open up. And, then I think I slept in my car that day. And then the next day I was on set, and it was like, I was there for those 5 days. And then I left on like Saturday. And that was the only time I've ever been in Louisiana as well, which kind of stinks because it's a cool place, but just in and out and here for the filming. I gotta go.
Man, that's awesome though. So let me ask you, do you believe that Dr. Ryan Crest is still alive?
Well, actually, and it wasn't me, but somebody put together a wiki of the character on the Jurassic wiki, and that says he died. So I go with that. But I would love for a Ryan Crest renaissance, right? I'm here for that, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean,
working for another company now,
Yeah, Manticore, Bison, whichever one.
That's it. You work for Dr. Wu. I mean, you've got the skills. You were there.
That's what I'm thinking.
He can maybe trust you with his secrets. Who knows where Dr. Ryan Crest is these days?
Thanks, guys. I like to think that too.
It only makes sense. It's the canonical tissue that kind of ties it all together. So the one thing, the sets were real, like Main Street, everything that was there was really complex. There's just a ton of details that are never seen in the films, really.
Definitely.
Are there any details that maybe stand out to you that maybe don't get talked about or seen, or just like cool little things that you noticed while you're doing that are like kind of worth bringing up?
Definitely, yeah. So I got to go into the gift shop, which was awesome. While we were there, they obviously filmed the movie, but they did a lot of stuff for the viral site as well. So they had lots of little like security cameras or tinier cameras in various buildings, and they would kind of just tell the extras to go into them and mill about, move around just so they could get the footage to then put on the websites and things. So I took full advantage of that. I always tried to like go into every place I could because I was there for, the experience really. And so going into the gift shop, I mean, it was cool to see. They had toys that I didn't know were prototypes of what we would eventually get for Jurassic World, even though they weren't the best. And then we also, the coolest thing I think in the gift shop to me was a stand of brochures and of postcards. And you never see them in the movie, but they were all just, very nice art style, but they referenced things like the baby Triceratops from the novel, or not the baby, but the like the pygmy dinosaurs from the novels that they had postulated about in the very beginning. Like maybe someday we could sell these as pets that people could take home and, feed InGen specific food. Obviously these postcards didn't have all of that on there, but they essentially said like keep a dinosaur in the palm of your hands, and it was like a very tiny sized Triceratops. And to me, as a fan of the books as well, that was like just really cool to see those tiny details where, even the people whose stuff was never going to actually be on camera, they were caring as well, putting it together.
That's really big world building, and I'm surprised that is something that they were probably playing around with, that then just like maybe kind of got cut from the plot, but like the props department still like carried on some of those threads. It's too bad that isn't something that doesn't get viewed, but of course that would change sort of the trajectory of like the overarching plot a little bit if that were focused on at the same time. So that I don't know, but that's something that's really cool. That's something that I wish that maybe the camera had focused on.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right there, because, we know Jurassic World went through a lot of production woes. A lot of that stuff in there, I think, may have even been from the previous script. I actually had a buddy that I made after filming who was involved with some of the art for previous iterations of Jurassic World, and he had designed some skateboards that some kids were going to be using in the park in that version, and his skateboard's actually like on the wall in the gift shop too. So like, I think a lot of that stuff, like you're saying, it's very possible maybe was from other iterations.
It does make you wonder how much art and design went. Like we've seen some of the stuff like the Malosaurus, which then became the Diabolus Rex, which then became the Indominus. We've seen a few things like that. We've seen Seth Engstrom's early Raptor concepts where they were going in the Jurassic Park 3 Raptor direction. I really do wonder though, like what else existed, like, it's like props and whatnot, and like little world building and story building things that maybe eventually got integrated. It is funny that you mentioned the prototypes in the gift shop. The other thing that a lot of people don't really realize or focus on is there were these unpainted helicopters and Humvee type of toy vehicles.
Yeah.
And those were legitimate prototypes of before. So those were from when Jurassic World or Jurassic Park 4 was going to get a toy line that was more traditional. If you know what I mean. It was before the new team took over and took it in the very subpar direction that eventually led to Hasbro losing the license. Yeah. Those were prototypes dating back to before Jurassic Park 4 got delayed, and when the original team that worked on the items that released in 2013, they were contributing on a more core toy line, like a 3.75-inch action figure scale, like scaling, and those were leftovers, remnants from that. And unfortunately, those are the only only like embodiment that has ever been seen. They've no prototypes have leaked out from there. Nothing. There's been really no dinosaurs, because what we saw were like the Pachyrhino and the Allosaurus. Also, I think in there. I don't think. Was there anything else that you recall, like action figure wise, that might have been like insight into a different Jurassic World?
There was a larger, but it was hard rubber T-Rex, not like the Papo or, the ones that are kind of out there now. It was a standing, tail outstretched, and it was bigger. It wasn't quite the size of the Thrasher, but, bigger than like the JP3 toys, if that, helps with the scale. And I would say that was probably the main thing I was interested in. I'm a T-Rex guy, so I was excited to see that. And I do, now that you say that, very much remember seeing the vehicles, but just passing over them, not thinking very much other than, oh, those are cool, like helicopter Humvee type thing. But other toys, no. And I mean, even the prototypes they had for what Hasbro would eventually put out, like they were all kind of that same hard rubber, no articulation really to them. So there's a good possibility maybe that T-Rex was something, but I've never seen it again.
If I recall, I think like the only sculpt that like kind of made it into the film that's like similar to the one that made it like onto shelves was Ankylosaurus.
Yes, definitely.
If I recall, the Raptor looked very different. The T-Rex looked very sort of Papo, Running Rex-esque. Mm-hmm. I forget now, but I remember like it looked like they kind of like they were very early, very mock-up, and most of them were not really representative of the final item, except for the Ankylosaur with that scorpion tail. I think it was green in the film, like green with like a brown shell or something like that. Very like saturated.
Those guys, and then the gloves, right? Those made it too.
Oh, the gloves! The gloves are basically exactly as they were. It's just funny. In the packaging in the film was pretty much the final packaging. It's even got that weird T-Rex head. The only difference is that for some reason that T-Rex has Spinosaurus arms in the film.
Really?
It's got these three-fingered Spinosaurus arms, and the final one they obviously fixed it to T-Rex fingers. But even in some of the early, prototype like catalog leaks that happened back in like 2014, 2015, it had Spino hands for a long time, which led a lot of people thinking that might be the hybrid because it's like this evil-looking T-Rex with these three-fingered hands. Everyone's like, "Is this the hybrid?"
They've crossed a T-Rex and a Spino. Yeah. That's it.
Is this the hybrid? Well, raptor hands, three fingers. It's a T-Rex. Like it did lead a lot of thinking like maybe the hybrid is just looking like a juiced-up T-Rex, and then ultimately that wasn't the case. But there was a little bit of curiosity of whether or not that key art represented it back then, as we all try to put two and two together.
So Brent, I know that when they were filming in Hawaii, the extras, they had hundreds of extras on that set too, running towards the docks and things like that. But they made every single person. They took SD cards out of people's cameras and they put a protective seal on the back of your phone camera, so that if you took it off, they knew, and then they would ask you to go through your phone. So did they do that in New Orleans?
I still have my little ET sticker that went over my over my camera. I don't know if they've specifically chose Ed Tide because the initials were ET, but they did have ET around a lot. And I know Trevorrow's a big Spielberg fan, so but yeah, they did that to us. I know, who isn't, right? But yeah, so they did that to us, and then almost all the extras I think got prop cell phones. I think that was something they were trying to show in the background, like everybody here is just on their phone, not really paying attention, right? So we all had phones they would turn on, but they didn't have SD cards, so you couldn't take pictures, you couldn't do anything exciting with them. I had my phone. I was as good as I could be, but I snuck a picture or two while I was there. I mean, I was on a Jurassic Park set. Yeah.
We're sending this to Universal. We're telling them.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
I definitely know of people. Some people brought in their own memory cards and put them in the prop.
Yeah.
The prop.
We got
cameras.
sent lots of pictures from Hawaii
because they're like, oh, I couldn't. People are like, I couldn't bring in the camera, but they're like, I could bring in a memory card and just put it in the prop cameras that are giving us, because they're like, they're charged, they're real, they send out memory cards. So I just slipped my memory card in it and took pictures and then took it home. Nobody leaked them. That was the one cool part, is nobody really leaked that stuff beforehand. It was just, hey, it's archival stuff, and hey, I'm all for archiving it so it's not lost to time, because there's just some cool stuff on those sets, like the JP3 Raptors or the male T-Rex and whatnot. Those are in the Innovation Center on the walls.
Really?
And it's like, yeah, it's like little things like that like I wish that the camera favored a little bit more, because it helps with that world building and helps tie it all together and helps with that continuity, which some people don't necessarily like. Some people still think that Jurassic World is like only Jurassic Park is canon and it's retconning Lost World and JP3, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
But like, I'll tell you what would have really been helpful is if some of those JP3 Raptors and whatnot made it into the film a little bit more prominently, like on the wall.
Or even if those events in those films had even been referenced or mentioned.
Yeah, that as well.
spoken out, or if because Vic Hoskins' character is supposed to be the lore on the website says that Vic Hoskins led the Pteranodon cleanup that happened after JP3, and that's kind of how he got involved with.
Cool idea, but unfortunately, it was done in post. Well, they didn't have that idea while making the movie.
It could have been referenced in the movie somehow, and then you've got this perfect linkage between the end of the last trilogy and this trilogy. But yeah, there is still a number of people that think Lost World and JP3 didn't happen in the current timeline. I'm just like, but there's nothing either way. Like either way, the island's been avoided, so it doesn't really matter either way. So let me ask you. So you, like us, you grew up with Jurassic, and then you waited on Dan's JP3 page, no less, for Jurassic Park 4 news, and there was 14 years where we didn't know what was happening.
Long time.
And you remember Dan's JP4 page, right? For a while, he temporarily had a Dan's JP4 page, but
he did.
So, do you? It may be hard because obviously you were in it and you had that amazing experience on set. But overall, what did you think of Jurassic World?
So yeah, I mean, like you're saying, I have a bit of a tainted view, right? I'm very close to it, but. Sure. I think a little bit more than you, Jack, and just by, hearing your conversation on the pod, enjoy it, potentially a little bit more. I think it has its flaws for sure, but I think like for bringing the series back after as long as it was away and, trying to get, people who aren't us, people who are already sold on Jurassic, because, I was going to be there opening day no matter what, the new kids, like my nephew or, somebody I can show it to that's younger. I think it did what it needed to. I mean, clearly it did. We've got video games now. We've got, awesome toy line, all this stuff. So the movie, I enjoy watching it. I watch it frequently. Fallen Kingdom, I watch, but not as much. I do enjoy it, but I feel like that's a middle movie in my mind, and I don't feel like I can judge it yet fully until Dominion's out. It sets up some stuff that I'm interested in, and it didn't go the directions I necessarily wanted, right? But I think the third movie is what's going to really make or break the Jurassic World kind of overarching story in my mind. I'm still kind of undecided. I think that's where I'm at. And I still love watching them. Even saying that, I'll still watch Fallen Kingdom, over most
that's fair enough. I struggle with Fallen Kingdom. I don't think I could ever put that on to watch. But it does. This is something we have mentioned before, is that when Dominion does come out, because it really is a linked trilogy. This one, they're not just like making the next one as they go. It is all kind of mapped out. I do feel like it will change the view of the first and second for me a little bit. It won't necessarily make me enjoy them anymore, but at least there'll be some like, oh, well, it all links and now it all feels better.
See, here's the thing. If I have a second here to talk about Fallen Kingdom, for one thing, I want to say I agree with you on Jurassic World. It's not like it's not exactly what I wanted, but I think it's a pretty good modern blockbuster film. Yeah. It's not the best Jurassic Park film, but its story is a pretty good Jurassic Park sequel. So what I mean, like, it's not made exactly like Jurassic Park, so I don't think it fully honors the style of Jurassic Park, but it definitely honors the story of Jurassic Park, if that makes sense. And I enjoy, and as a film there, I think that it's a pretty good film. I don't think it's the best Jurassic Park film, but I think it's a pretty good Jurassic Park sequel if you take the filmmaking style out of the picture. And it's a good filmmaking style, modern. Anyway, Fallen Kingdom. My issue with Fallen Kingdom is, first of all, assuming that we understand the premise of Jurassic World 3 well enough that dinosaurs are across the world suddenly now. So let's just assume that that's the case. Dinosaurs are across the world and they're just sort of somewhat commonplace. I don't know. We'll see. But assuming that, I think Fallen Kingdom, aside from not being a great movie, fails as a sequel because it doesn't follow up or make anything that Jurassic World did relevant. So when I say that is you don't need to understand what Jurassic World did with hybrids to understand the Indoraptor. Fallen Kingdom gives the Indoraptors about as much setup as the Indominus Rex had. You can understand the Indominus Rex in Jurassic World. You can understand the Indoraptor. So again, you don't need the previous film to establish hybrids. It already does the work within the film. So it doesn't need to establish that. The other thing that Jurassic World did was it established that the park has been open for 13 years or 10 years or something like that. And so the park has been open. It's successful, everything along those lines. InGen is now the successful company, and they have this facility. So as you assume this global company that is successful, you're going to assume that it has global outposts or other facilities or whatnot. But when you go into Fallen Kingdom, the only thing that they acknowledge is, Isla Nublar. Again, it's you have this big wide open world that you've built, and then they're like, oh, never mind, it was just narrow again. So Fallen Kingdom could have happened without Jurassic World. Easily could have happened without... You don't need Jurassic World. For the premise of the island blowing up because of a volcano, that could have been the sequel to Jurassic Park 3.
Well, that's
the public
thing.
already...
Fallen Kingdom feels like what Jurassic Park 4 could have been, in the sense it's going back to this abandoned island. The first one didn't
Fallen Kingdom makes Jurassic World wholly irrelevant. Yeah. Because the things that happen in Jurassic World, because of what they do in Fallen Kingdom, no longer matter, because they retread the hybrid concept and they completely toss away everything new that the Jurassic World did for world building. Now, one would think, okay, so what else did Jurassic World achieve? Well, you could say, oh, well, dinosaurs are commonplace in common knowledge, but the thing is that's already established in Jurassic Park 3. Everyone know after the San Diego incident, everyone knew about dinosaurs. And as we can see in Jurassic Park 3, people with not a lot of money could get to these islands, which means there were documentary crews, there were pictures, everything like that. So, should sometime after Jurassic Park 3 a volcano be about to erupt on Isla Nublar or Sorna, the public would know and they would still care, so there would still be a debate about rescuing the dinosaurs. So again, I just don't think that it exactly follows the premise. It kind of makes Jurassic World irrelevant. Likewise, if we're assuming Jurassic World 3 now starts with the dinosaurs being commonplace across the globe, Fallen Kingdom also doesn't set that up. In fact, it makes... by saying these dinosaurs are the last dinosaurs and that Isla Nublar is like the last bastion of dinosaurs and they're not in other places in the world,
we have to save them, or else there'll be no dinosaurs.
It makes the premise of Jurassic World 3 that happens just 3 years later all the more unbelievable, especially because we see like only 20 dinosaurs get free. Yeah. So that's why I think in terms of... I don't think Fallen Kingdom's a good movie with those issues aside, but its place in the film universe to me just doesn't work because it makes Jurassic World wholly irrelevant and it fails to set up the premise of what we're told is Jurassic World 3. If the premise of Jurassic World 3 was tracking down the dinosaurs at the end of Fallen Kingdom, then okay, cool. But it's not. We've been told, Colin's gone on record saying, you can't put it back in the box. That's not what it's about. It's about living with these consequences. And it's like, well, you didn't really set up those consequences for in a global scale. In fact, you made the world so small with Fallen Kingdom that it seems so counterintuitive to where it's going now. So Fallen Kingdom, outside of the fact that I think it's a bad movie, I think that it is entirely antithetical to the premise of where they're bringing the films and what they followed. It doesn't work for me in the grand scheme of things. So that's why I've got the twofold reasons not liking Fallen Kingdom. One, I don't think it's the best movie. I think it's beautifully made. I think it has a lot of great ideas. But I also just don't think that it serves the grand story. It doesn't serve what came before. It doesn't serve what comes after. It seems half-baked.
That's completely
so
fair.
Sorry, that was a rant. I'm sorry.
No, that was great to hear.
It's been in my head, and it's because I finally kind of like... I've been thinking about why it's bothering me so much. So it's like one of those things where I don't know. Anyhow, I don't want...
But it makes sense. It does make sense. I understand it from that concept. I mean, we've said my view of Fallen Kingdom has always been... regardless of those issues, you take out that it's a Jurassic movie, just as a movie, it's a bad movie. Like, it's not very well made. Like, in terms of, as Chris mentioned, visually, absolutely stunning. And a lot of love went into that movie. But I don't personally think Bayona was the right choice.
I think Fallen Kingdom would have been better if Colin directed it, because I think Bayona was very much at odds with Colin's vision and didn't fully know how to execute it. And so, like, Bayona struggled to find a tone that made sense with the movie. He found a visual style that would place. But
to say that Bayona was, is a huge Spielberg fan as well, I don't see much of that influence in Fallen Kingdom. It's weird. But anyway, that's something else. Dominion is exciting me, I have to say. And the IMAX preview was the best thing Colin's ever done. So, I mean, what's your view? Did you get to see that in IMAX?
I did, yeah. I'm lucky enough to have an IMAX pretty close to me, so I went and checked it out. It was amazing. I mean, obviously, I wish I could have watched it a million times on the computer and really taken it in, not just seen it the once. In my theater, like they played all the trailers and then they did the like thanks for being an IMAX, and then they played the commercial. So like for the first 10-20 seconds of it, I was just like worried it wasn't going to happen and I wasn't going to see it, and so it was awesome to see though. And I met another community member who lives near me, first time ever meeting like in person, and we went to the theater together and saw it. So that was
brilliant.
That was pretty cool. And
it's such a good, it's so different. I mean, the first time I went to see it, I drove to the wrong cinema, so it was about nearly an hour away from me and drove to the wrong one.
I get these texts from Jack and I'm just like, what? I'm like, how?
On my way to see Dominion. I caught it the next night, and it just incredible. Like when I was sat there waiting for it, every time something begun to play, I was like, is this it?
It's nerve-wracking. It is nerve-wracking because you hear these stories of people's theaters not playing them, and then like right before it plays, it's like, thank you for like coming. Like it plays the thing that normally plays right before the movie starts, and you're just like, oh no.
I miss it?
Yeah, and then it plays, and you're like, oh, okay, this is really cool.
It was. Yeah. It felt like such an epic, big, real piece. It felt like a real piece of a Jurassic movie, and going back 65 million years and actually, time traveling back and filming that. But seriously, setting something 65 million years ago, like, why hasn't that been done in this franchise yet? That's smart to me. I think it's such a brilliant idea, especially as the final movie, the ending one that at least ends this trilogy. And as they always say, it's meant to bring all the ideas from the first one like full circle. Having that and setting a scene that's 65 million years ago, it was incredible. And everything about it has improved from the first two. Even ILM's animations, the compositing, the cinematography, everything about it was so much better than the first two that it really gives me a lot of hope for Dominion.
The directing, the cinematography, the visuals, the way that the animals are directed and act like animals, it really sells it. I still have the issues with the anachronisms that it does, and I sort of do think that it lacks a little bit of a singular vision. Like, what is it trying to achieve? Is it trying to give us the origin story of the T-Rex? Is it trying to introduce us to the Giganotosaurus, or is it trying to set up a grudge match between the Giganotosaurus? But exactly, cinematically, it doesn't have one singular vision. It's sort of messy in that sense. And because of that, it also, without that one singular vision, it also throws away the concept of these dinosaurs in their time were different. They were real back then, but now. So it just changed the rule book entirely. So if it does end up being true that it's out of the final film, I am kind of happy. Like, I think it's beautifully shot, and I hope it's on the Blu-ray. I hope it's released. I think everything like that. But I think its story is confused. It didn't know what it wanted to be. It would be fine up until that final battle, but then it's just like, I was sort of like, is it the origin story?
If the point was to establish the battle, there's obviously going to be a Giga versus T-Rex in the film. I personally, that was the one bit in that IMAX preview that was unnecessary.
You don't need to establish that. We've already seen the T-Rex will.
It starts from nowhere. You just all of a sudden they just start fighting. You're like, why are they fighting though? Like, why? But
and why is that iguanodon standing behind them, like between them, chilling up until that?
Just watching. But none of that ruined it for me. I thought the scene was fantastic, and probably other than, obviously completely different, but Safety Not Guaranteed is like Colin's best movie, and then I think this is his best Jurassic something.
I was a big fan of Big Rock too, Battle of Big Rock, but
this feels like it evolved from that.
Yeah,
in the best possible way.
Definitely. I guess you guys were going to answer the one question I had, but I'm still unaware if that sequence is it planned for the film? We don't really know yet, right? We're not entirely sure if it's going to.
It was made for the film. There was an interview with Colin and Steve Brissetti, and we're not sure if it made the final cut or not. I know that as of their screenings, the cuts they had over the summer, it was not in the movie. So I'd wager that it's not in the movie. I think we'll know whether or not it's in the movie if it releases online in full. I think that if it releases online in full anytime before like a month before the movie or 2 months before the movie, that means it's probably not in the movie. If it doesn't release online in full, that means they probably put it back in the movie. I think that's going to be our answer on that one.
I do think either way, they need to put it back in theaters, because obviously the IMAX thing, I understand the concept, I understand getting people back in cinemas, but unfortunately not everybody has an IMAX, and if you're an idiot, you'll drive to the wrong one anyway. So I do think like they should should bring it back, and they should do just a week's run or even just a weekend, but put it on something that's releasing. It should have been on Halloween Kills, you know,
Probably, yeah.
just ahead of it, and just let people get excited.
It shouldn't have been IMAX only. This movie wasn't shot in IMAX.
No.
And also,
that scene should have been IMAX because it looked so goddamn good. Like they should have shot. It's Socotra, wasn't it? The location for that. So
which ironically, it was all second unit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The best cinematography in the whole of Dominion. It's all second unit.
Yeah, that was all second unit. Now I'm sure that they followed very tight plan.
Rigorous
that was already it was probably very tightly pre-planned and everything before that. But yeah, that was all second unit. The cinematographer Colin, nobody was out there for that. It was a Egyptian team, I think, entirely that handled that entire sequence. So it was sort of a very unique, it was sort of a very unique team that handled that all, which is interesting.
Yeah, they pulled it off.
You're excited for Dominion? You think,
oh yeah, I can't wait. I think we're all on pins and needles for a trailer sometime here soon. So that's what I'm waiting for the most part here. Yeah, we got a game coming and more Camp Cretaceous, so it's got to be eventually, right?
Have you been keeping up with Camp Cretaceous?
Oh yeah, I love Camp Cretaceous. I know you guys a little down on the second season, but the first 1 and 3 fans of, and across the board I've liked them. 2 was a little, I can see where you're coming from, but is a kid's show and being Jurassic, I think I have a blast with it. I've watched it more than once, so
yeah, that's the thing.
Right?
I mean, I think my view of it was it can't really be tainted. It's a kid's show. And it will always be a kid's show, but I went into it knowing that and ended up really, really enjoying it and really enjoying the Jurassic nods that it gave to the original trilogy. And even in season 3, like it was full of them, and they're really well executed. Like stuff they talk about before they go to the visitor center. That is season 3, right? Yeah, season 3. The visitor center. When Yasmin
the rumor of Hammond,
John Hammond's death, and I was like, that's the novel death, and that's so like they knew what they're talking about, and that's just great. Like that's really nice treatment for the franchise. And again, while it's not exactly what I want to see, I want like a live action something that's more mature, more adult. I think it's so successful and it's so good, and season 3 was so much fun. This franchise really is back, and again, while it's not exactly like what I want to be seeing, I'm just happy that Jurassic is everywhere. I like walking around and seeing the Jurassic World logo because I'm like,
awesome.
That's
well,
that's Jurassic.
I fully love Camp Cretaceous, but one thing I think that I would like to see handled differently with animation in the future is do a little bit what Star Wars does, where like just because it's animation and for kids so and so or whatnot doesn't necessarily mean the characters need to be kids. Star Wars has a really great history of like Star Wars, the Clone Wars, or Star Wars Rebels, or Bad Batch. Full disclaimer, I haven't seen Bad Batch. I haven't finished Clone Wars yet. But like what I've seen in Clone Wars, it's handled really well. My issue is it's sort of an anthology series before it finds its tighter arcs, which makes it a little harder for me to keep up with. But I like basically though with Star Wars, the Clone Wars is you're following adult characters, you're following the themes in the movies, where with Jurassic, they still seem to have that antiquated view of like, oh, it's a cartoon, it's for kids, we need to make the main characters kids. And it's like they sort of do the same things with like the novel tie-ins, like the evolution of Claire and whatnot. It's like they still handle some of the world building in an antiquated pre-cinematic universe way of like they're trying to make everything connected. Yeah. But they're sort of handling everything differently. But that's not necessarily a complaint about the tone of Camp Cretaceous. It's just how long can you make a story of campers surviving on their own when it's just a group of kids?
Without
how
parents
long can you,
trying to go rescue them.
How long can you keep that story truly canon? Do you know what I mean? Without like really jumping the shark too many times, which I think season 2 did quite a bit, but also season 2 just sort of lacked direction. It didn't really. It was a middling season. It's like sort of
season 2 was definitely
just like biding its time to get.
Definitely.
In fact, there have been leaks, and it's nothing that we're going to talk about. Something that we have talked about, but there are leaks of what season 2 was originally going to be, and it was originally very different.
Interesting.
It was.
I think the Dominion delay really
plot.
did mess with things. The same with I think it messed with Evolution 2 a little bit, and I think they had to scramble a lot of different things together to try and not spoil Dominion tie-ins, because I think Camp Cretaceous Season 4 and Evolution 2, I think, is going to reveal, it's not going to spoil Dominion in any way, but I think it's going to reveal a lot more about the plot and what we kind of can expect to see. So that'll be interesting. And it's an interesting point, Chris, about the sort of aiming at the kid audiences, because there's so much Lego stuff. There's so many Lego shorts.
They're already going for that audience that I think that, and they're mainly targeting super fans and young teens to young adults with Camp Cretaceous anyhow. That I'm fine with Camp Cretaceous being what it is, but what I am worried is Universal's always going to handle animated by like having kids be like the star of the show, where it's like you could easily have something like Camp Cretaceous have the tone, have the same audience interested in it, but like have paleontologists or like dino wranglers as your lead characters, or Jurassic World employees and whatnot.
Dave and Roxy.
Like, my one worry is they will continue to handle it in like that antiquated sort of 90s way, where it's like you've got like the kids leading the show, and like next, like they're taking the lead from the adult characters because it's a cartoon and it's kids. And it does sort of feel like Universal has a little bit more of an antiquated handling of their side stories. But at the same time, the team behind Camp Cretaceous has done an excellent job executing on it, and it still feels Jurassic. But the longer you kind of do that, the harder it's going to be without like kind of breaking some of the rules.
I think season 4 will switch things up a lot.
I think that. So, where do you think season 4 will go?
For the longest time, I was thinking Sorna like everybody else. With the new teaser, right? We're all a little up in the air on what a new island could mean, but I still think it's a new island to the campers. So I hope they don't introduce another island like we talked about earlier on. Just the fact that some people think that, Lost World and JP3 are not even part of the canon. Like, this is the perfect place. Take them there. Take them to Sorna. Come on.
It's important. It's important for a lot of reasons, but I talked about a little bit about it on Twitter, where I'm like, why I think people are so drawn to Sorna, and it's connective tissue to these past films. But also, it's sort of a chance for these Jurassic World stories and characters, Jurassic Park stories and characters and dinosaurs to sort of live on in the Jurassic World era, because Jurassic World has recontextualized Nublar, it's recontextualized what's on Nublar. So a lot of those old concepts of things that people wanted to see, it can no longer be on Nublar. Sort of is done, but if you revisit Sorna and you tie it all together, that gives an opportunity to bring to bring it into the modern era, bring some of the Jurassic Park era elements into the modern era and say that they persist. And I think that's one of the reasons why. Also, it's going to be nostalgic for the old school fans, and for new fans who don't know about Sorna, guess what? It's just new to them. Exactly. So it's win-win. It's win-win. You're gonna appease the original, super fans, the old school fans, and you're still giving new content to the new fans. If you have the JP3 Raptors or the JP3 Pteranodons, they're these awesome things for these old school fans, and it also makes the world a lot bigger. It makes the sort of universe actually have lore. But then for the new fans, it's like, oh shit, what are these new things? So it's win-win, really, no matter how you look at it.
Maybe they get split up. So maybe they do go to Sorna, and half of the kids end up getting whisked away and taken somewhere else. The remaining kids stay on Sorna and meet up with Dave and Roxy. Maybe there's like a dual story happening there. Because I feel like if they go to Sorna, we ain't staying there long. A couple of episodes at most, and then I
definitely agree. I think the teaser tried to establish that. I think that's why there was that shot of the desert. I think they absolutely know everyone's like Sorna, and I think that shot of the desert in the teaser is like, oh shoot, because even if it is on Sorna, I think they're like, oh shoot, we better not set the hopes too high for like a season exploring the secrets of Sorna, because
there was a leak the other day that by all accounts was based on not true information.
Oh, you mean the thing yesterday?
Yeah, they sort of a partner of Universal revealed that the location is Site B, but it didn't really read as if it was official.
No, in fact, they said. I mean, they said, "Hey, listen, we didn't announce that. We actually just thought the plot was out there. We Googled it. We're like, what? The announcement.
I wonder where they got it from. Then I wonder, like,
they're like, we just wanted something for Camp Cretaceous season 4 on our website because we knew it was coming, and we blah blah blah. They're like, so we just Googled it and saw that everyone's saying it's on Sorna. So we just thought that was the announcement. Our bad."
Because it said, I think it read like the kids return to Site B. I'm like, they've never been there.
They haven't been there, yeah.
But okay, so let's talk Aftermath. So Aftermath is a VR game. You have a bit of experience with VR, but you've played through both parts 1 and part 2, right?
I have, yes. I'm a big fan of both of them, and like you said, I do know a little bit about VR. So I thought maybe I could come on and try to give some tips or pointers to new players. Maybe it would make the experience a little more fun, because I know Chris was running into some VR, setup and just experience like level type things outside of maybe the game, but the equipment too. So I thought maybe I could lend a hand, talk through it,
So
because
what's your experience with VR? So I mean, the
yeah.
Kaiju VR game.
Yeah, so I'll pitch that real quick here. It's called Blockbuster. I'm creative director on this, so it's a company that I've been co-owner of since 2014. We started in film. We made a series that's on Amazon, or was on Amazon. Now it's on Tubi. It's called Like Them. And we transitioned to doing 3D work a couple of years later, which led to having a team that kind of had the capabilities to do a game. And me being the person that I am, loving Jurassic Park and also Godzilla, like large, monster movies. Not that Jurassic Park's a monster movie, but like in that
It
vein.
is now, but yeah.
Yeah. Sad, in some ways, sadly. But so we decided, what could we do here? Like, what's a game that, would be in that vein, but still fun and accessible? So we landed on like an action arcade kaiju experience where you're a monster destroying cities, trying to get through the levels under a time limit, while also looking for items like hidden amongst the rubble of the city. So you can unlock new playable characters and new weapons to use and new levels to go to. We're getting close to our early access release, so that'll be within the next month. And there'll be 3 levels and 2 characters, a lizard, kind of Godzilla-y, and then a crab monster, Claw Daddy, and his actual kaiju name is Clawtastrophe. So you actually cosplay as these monsters. The whole concept is you're imagining being the guy in the rubber suit, right, in the old Toho movies, destroying the cities. So you have your persona as the cosplayer, as well as like the creatures that you're kind of idolizing. So those are the 2 you're going to have to start, and then you're going to be able to destroy our version of San Francisco, Mount Fuji, and then New York in like the 30s, and it's like black and white, and you get to do a kind of tower climb in the end. Our homage to what do you got in there, King Kong?
That's so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it's exciting. We've been working on it for around 2 years now, so it's a labor of love, but it's coming together. So I would appreciate anybody who wants to.
On Oculus platform, or
so we are an indie team, and we're aiming to get it on the Oculus, but we have not made it through all of the processes to get there yet. That's why we're going into early access, to try to start gaining some backing, get some interest in the game. So anybody who's listening that has played Aftermath and has a Quest, it'll be available on the Side Quest, which, if you know a little bit about the headset, it's a store that is not officially through Oculus, but is available to load in indie developer games. So that's where we'll be at first, and eventually, hopefully, right there next to Aftermath. That would be the ultimate goal.
Yeah, that'd be a great goal.
Awesome.
So, with your experience as a creative director on your own VR game, what is your view of Aftermath?
Okay, yeah, I'll jump in, and I would say, as an experience overall, I loved it. I'm more on Asis's side of the argument from the last few episodes. I do think, yeah, it seemed like it, and I was happy to hear it. I appreciate that it's not a park builder as much as I love, those games. I'm excited for Evolution 2, and I still own Operation Genesis and play it occasionally. So
yes,
I love those games, but it's nice to be breaking away from that, right? And I do agree with you, Chris. Like, I wish there were more, bigger party titles. But in my mind, I do appreciate that Universal is is trying to back, this technology. It is new, and I think like a property like Jurassic does bring people to like a technology, much like Oculus. I know you guys had mentioned there being some Star Wars games on there. To me, like, that's pretty high honors. Like, it really is only right now Jurassic and Star Wars that are kind of trying to get people to, come to this new technology, this new gaming platform. So it is just going to show that Jurassic, even if they're not doing what we exactly want, they're trying to expand to, what could potentially be next, because that's what I really wanted to talk about with the Quest. It is the first of its kind. I do know, like, Chris, I think you had mentioned, did you do the Dave and Buster's, like, VR? Yeah.
It's
so
really,
that's cool.
really cool. It's very, very cool. Very, very cool.
Photoreal, which is
the Jurassic one, or just
yes.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's still there, but it was around the Fallen Kingdom time. So you were able to check it out as well, Jack, or I didn't know.
Yeah, so I saw it at Josh and Jen's wedding. We met them first at Dave and Buster's, not on the wedding day. It was a couple of nights before, but yeah, we played the Jurassic Park VR. I had my mind blown. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, those are amazing, undoubtedly, but that is a specifically built experience that is not interacted with really in any way, right? You're on a track, you're put in a headset, and it's meant to play over and over the same thing every experience, and which is awesome. It's amazing, and it felt like you were getting chased by the dinosaurs in the movie. But where the Quest comes in is it's essentially, when you think about it, you should think about it as a cell phone. You really are playing a mobile game when you're playing on the Quest, just the processing power and kind of what's in the headset itself. And that's not to, say, not as a negative. It's just that is the case, just in order to fit it into the size machine that it needs to play on, it had to be that kind of processing power. So with wanting photoreal, I'm there with you. I want to avoid the T-Rex and, do all those things, but it's just not quite there yet. So I really appreciate Aftermath's art style. And I know it sounded, I don't want to speak for you, Chris. I'm just trying to recap the stuff that I remembered you talking about, but it did seem like, that was a thing that was kind of putting you off, right? It wasn't Jurassic because it didn't look like the dinosaurs in a way.
There's a lot of issues at play with me for Aftermath that I enjoyed it, but I found playing it to be a little difficult, a little restrictive, and I felt that it just never fully lived up to its potential. And yeah, I don't expect it to necessarily be entirely photoreal, but I think like looking at what the Star Wars games have done with their visuals is probably a better goal, especially for a property with Jurassic, where that they have a high budget, that they have the ability to really push the limits as far as they can. And I think like one of the things is just, for one thing, even if the graphics aren't entirely realistic, I think that what would have really helped is, even if they weren't realistic, if the art style was still Jurassic. The thing is, they remix the art style. And then other things like, just because the animation's a little stiff, so it's like this sort of semi-cel shaded look. So getting a raptor snarling in your face really isn't a raptor snarling in your face type of deal. They're not really utilizing the concept of, wow, you're really looking at a raptor. You're looking at this sort of blocky, cartoony, stiff like raptor. So there's a lot of cool things to it, and the art style just doesn't seem like, to me, in my opinion, it's not really utilizing VR. The idea is to bring you into this world, but it's not bringing me into that world because they completely changed it up. Like, I mean, even their T-Rex looks, if I didn't know it was a Jurassic T-Rex, I wouldn't know it was a Jurassic T-Rex. Same with the Raptors. If I didn't know they were Jurassic Raptors, I wouldn't know they're Jurassic Raptors, because they're just, graphical limitations aside, the art style is just completely, it feels like the wrong art style for VR, in my opinion.
Yeah. Hey, and that's totally fair, like that's how everybody's going to experience the game, as their own unique, take on it, right?
Well, I guess the wrong art style for Jurassic VR. I like a lot. I've played a lot of VR games that are stylized. I think they're fantastic. But when you're going into, explore Isla Nublar, go to Jurassic World. It's like, okay, well, make it look like Isla Nublar, make it look like Jurassic World. Is sort of my takeaway there. But like some games that are super stylized, like Super Hot, that's a cool game. It's a really fun game, and the visuals look so slick, even though they're obviously not photoreal at all.
Yeah,
but,
no, you're right on there, and there's no argument to make. I mean, I'm totally with you. The Raptors, although not JP Raptors, it more felt like, you know, I'm playing with dinosaurs, you know, like maybe not exactly the Jurassic dinosaurs, and I can see all of that. And it does ultimately come down, in my opinion, to it being not a PC VR game. I think you would have got exactly what you wanted if it was PC VR, but it was just being on the Quest. It's a toss up between the Star Wars stuff, which does look good, but it does look PS2 level, you know, PlayStation 2. That's generally kind of the way I try to say the graphics come out when we're discussing things. But it's the question of, do you want like Operation Genesis dinosaurs chasing you, or do you want these, you know, more stylized, maybe less Jurassic dinosaurs? And I think Assis was saying last week that he would just play and go, you know, I'm fully committing, right? I'm just in here, and then just kind of let that go by the wayside. And then you don't notice it as much, but you're completely, you know, spot on with the actual assets not being necessarily Jurassic.
My other issue is it's sort of like the light version of the game everyone's been asking for. You know what I mean? It's like Alien Isolation Mobile Edition, but in VR. And like, so the VR capabilities are super cool, but it's hard to use them to their fullest extent unless you have a play space, because this game is really built in these large playing areas, which means like a lot of other VR games are smart about how they utilize their play space. But for Jurassic, with the way that you need to be moving quick on a dime, and you need these large play spaces, it becomes a lot harder to play. Where other VR games, sometimes you don't need your precise running around motions aren't as needed. Now, obviously, there's other ways to play it. You can play it with a controller or things like that. But to play it to its fullest extent, you sort of need a wide, safe play space. Where other games, again, they change the flow of their gameplay to accommodate most people's living spaces that they're going to be playing in. I feel like Jurassic World Aftermath is a cool idea, but your average person probably can't get the most out of the experience, and the average core gamer is going to want more of a traditional, fully fledged core experience. So it's like it's trying to appease two different crowds rather than just like committing to VR, I guess, is sort of where I'm at with it, if that makes sense.
I could see that. And I mean, it sounds like you do play other games on your Quest, so you know, like the Guardian system and the best ways to kind of, you know, move within it. That if you're new to VR, like say Aftermath's your first game, the Guardian system does take a bit of getting used to. It is the reason that our company specifically was so excited about the Quest, because you do have that freedom to actually, you know, run in place, do the things you're kind of saying, you know, dodge and all this stuff. Because if you're playing PC or VR any other way, you're generally tethered, right? So it's
really cool. It's really cool. I think my biggest issue is just Jurassic World just wants you to have way too large of play spaces to utilize the Guardian system to its fullest extent. I think it's just, you know, my house and most houses I've been in, most apartments I've been in, don't have that type of play space, especially because you got tables and couches and everything else like within your play space. So, and yes, you can draw the Guardian around it, but it gets a little difficult with those fast moments where you want to throw yourself out of the way of a raptor or duck, and next thing you know, you're smacking against, you hit a wall or something like that. So it's just one of those things where it's like the gameplay we're Super Hot. You know, you kind of like walk through it. You feel like you're Neo, and you play. There's just games that like your movement speed, everything slows down, and then you can just walk through it. But in Jurassic World Aftermath, if things go wrong, you got to get in that locker fast or you're dead type of deal, or you got to get underneath that table, and it's just like, it's difficult. It's a really cool idea, but it's harder to play to its fullest extent. At least in my experience, it was.
Yeah, and it's all about like learning the controls and the best ways to move, because when I first started playing, I was doing the real world stuff, just like you're describing, right? Ducking and going under stuff and like being like, man, my knees hurt. Like I'm hiding, you know, like,
like
and then,
sweating, like getting a workout.
Exactly, and you can play it that way, but when I played part 2, because that's how I played part 1, and then when I got part 2, I actually just set up a stationary guardian, and I used just joysticks. I would move in place, but I wouldn't run, because that you do run into a lot of issues there. So I wanted to make a suggestion to you, Chris, if you do play and you don't have it on. One of the things that really helps with the Guardian system is a feature in the settings where you can put on a glanceable Guardian. So while you're in the game, if you look at the floor, you can actually see where your Guardian is within the game without interacting with it. So it really helps to orientate yourself for things like you're saying, if you want to actually be able to run and, hide and do the things like actually within the environment. That does help. I just wanted to make sure to point that out, because it's not a thing they necessarily let people know is available. So it helps for smaller places.
I'll look into it. I think one of the fun things was playing that game. Like, you draw your Guardian so you can like walk around through the limitations of it. And sometimes like pulling off the headset and being like, oh, I'm in my kitchen right now. Because I would draw my Guardian through the entire safe space of my house. Like, I would really utilize every, you'd have these narrow choke points and these wide open rooms and stuff like that. And sometimes it was funny. Like, I'm like, oh, I need a break. And I pull off my headset. I'm like, oh, I'm in the bathroom? Okay. like, it's just like one of those funny things. Like, it is really interesting, like how you get fully immersed into this world. And that's why I would love just to have like a wide open space that I could just draw like a nice big cubic Guardian, and I don't have to worry about anything, and I can just explore these game worlds. And but yeah, it's hard. Unfortunately, I don't have access to anything like that.
I think Jurassic needs to do a void experience like Star Wars has, where it is exactly what you're describing. Like a haunted house in VR, essentially, right? Where you can walk through it and run.
That would be cool. It would definitely. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, honestly,
if it's Jurassic Park, it should be Lockwood Manor, and then you have, in the
basement,
Raptor or other things in there as well.
Well, I would love just a VR set visit. Like,
that would be very cool. Yeah.
Something that it's like not super interactable, but you can walk through the set and see the skeletons up close, or the stands up close, or things like that. Or, I mean, hell, see Jurassic World through VR, just go and view the T-Rex feeding experience. And there's a lot of opportunities for VR, and I always thought Jurassic World was a great fit for it. But I thought it was more of like bringing the park to life, bringing these attractions that were theme park attractions, and letting us like actually go there. But
I think we're going to make it. I think we're going to make it, Chris, at some point. It is just the beginning, right, of kind of this technology, trying to get people into it. So even before this game, they had, you guys probably know about it, but like one of those cell phone Jurassic World VR experiences where you could slide it into
Samsung, was it
the Apatosaurus?
Well, they had that, but they had a full-on game. Well, it was a company that made it. You got like a controller. It was really, really bad.
Oh, I do remember this. Yeah.
Verve or something, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, so they've been trying. They really have. I mean, clearly it's something that somebody at Universal is into. They want VR to be, Jurassic related. So I have my fingers crossed that someday we're going to get that photoreal tour of the island.
I mean, yet. Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for VR. I love VR, and I've loved a lot of VR games just for whatever reason. And I played Aftermath. I liked Aftermath. But it hasn't been enough now that I had those difficulties getting into Aftermath 2. I haven't necessarily had that FOMO from it.
But you definitely need to play part 2, Chris.
Yeah, I really need to charge it and just play it.
He said he's going to set up cameras around his house so that the Outpost,
everyone
can watch.
That'd be awesome. Yeah,
running around the house, bumping into walls.
Boom.
That is part of the fun.
A raptor and smacking his head into the fridge.
My cousin who lives with me, just like walking by, like with a cup of coffee, like
trying to step your way a little bit, chucking things in your direction. But part 1,
just see if I can dodge it.
Brent, part 1, part 2. Which part did you enjoy the most?
I would say 2. Again, I mentioned earlier, the T-Rex is kind of my biggest dinosaur. Like I'm the biggest fan of that dinosaur. So it or she actually plays a role in that game, more so than the first, or in part 2 more so than part 1. And the mechanics they used for the gameplay for the T-Rex in VR were just, I don't know, I didn't expect it. Do you guys mind if I kind of talk through it a little bit? I think Assis might have brought it up, but when you encounter the T-Rex, you actually, her vision is based on movement, which for VR is, perfect. You actually have to remain still and not move a muscle when it's approaching you or around you. And, I felt like Alan Grant, man. And it's something
awesome.
I wanted, since a kid, right? Vision's based on movement, and then having it actually a playable mechanic in a video game, that really sold me. I know it's a simple thing, right? I mean, there's plenty of other aspects of the game that were a lot of fun, but it was just a kind of like a dream come true moment, right? Like, I get to do this. Oh my God, it's the Rexy's right there. And yeah, so that was cool. And Chris, I hope you get to experience that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that sounds really fun. Are there any, like, did any of the lore feel significant? Like, any of the story or the lore? Because, like, obviously part 1 ends with this big kind of cliffhanger, and what they seem to say sounds like it would be significant, that Blue was bred for parthenogenesis. Blue was bred to be capable of asexual breeding. So, like, that feels important. Is there other elements in part 2 that also feel important?
So they didn't really follow up on the part I'm not going to say the word because you're always good with the scientific terms there, Chris. But they don't really follow that up as much as maybe I would have liked. But they do go into a bit of the raptor training that was going on pre-Owen. So like how they were getting them to react to sounds and certain things, which I thought was interesting. And then one of the kind of cooler things that you can glean from emails within the game is that like why exactly Dr. Wu didn't have Blue's DNA after Jurassic World, which is like a question I've kind of always had. Like, you see him leave in the helicopter with the briefcase, like you'd think that's what he would have grabbed, right? Like, Blue and Dominus Rex, let's get out of here. Like, that's what I need. But apparently the NMS, which is the name of the research station in the game, which stands for our MNS, so
North
Mount Sibo is what it stands for. So NMS, which I didn't know, at least in the first part, and I found out later. I thought that was kind of interesting. So at least this facility is on the north side of the volcano, so very far north on the island. So it is feasible that it hadn't been interacted with either in Camp Cretaceous or the movies. But getting back to what I was saying about Wu, apparently after he took off on the helicopter in Jurassic World, he went to the NMS Center to get Blue's DNA, but Blue's DNA was locked in a like cryogenic storage facility at this center, and the employees had already been evacuated, and he had no ability to get into the lab to get it. It's a pretty basic thing, but at least in my mind, that it's a nice little kind of bow.
So raptors were basically like their security protocols kept raptor DNA at a different location.
Yeah,
and like a different team from like a lot of the other DNA.
Exactly. So I thought that was interesting. The character you're speaking with, she has some fun ties to Hammond. I think you guys might have mentioned, and then the Ian Malcolm dialogue, in my opinion, was some of the best stuff we've had from him, since Lost World. I wasn't, like we talked, the biggest fan of his cameo in Fallen Kingdom, so it was cool to actually hear Ian Malcolm again. At least that's what it felt like to me. And the way they wrap up the story, I won't say entirely because you might actually end up playing it, and somebody, I'm sure there are plenty of listeners that haven't yet. But it wraps up in a way where you are on a mission to get Blue's DNA, but the fact that, Fallen Kingdom, they don't have it yet, that makes sense. That's all I'll say. So I appreciated that as well, because they very easily could have just been like, well, you got it, and and
you win.
Well, how does this tie in at all? So
yeah. No, that's good. It sounds like it could be canon, right? Considered canon. Works within the universe. Obviously, the art style is drastically different, but it's a VR game. I'm hoping at some point to have the experience to play it. I'd like to play that game.
That does bring me to the one thing, though, is sometimes like the idea of all these things being canon. It always feels half baked because Camp Cretaceous doesn't mention the NMS at least. Like you don't necessarily need to have a plot line involved in it, but
is that where Wu went in season 3?
But like that's the thing.
To the island.
Well, that's just the thing. It doesn't look anything like it. The NMS was its own, like Camp Cretaceous doesn't talk about the NMS. It doesn't talk about these other raptors that are existing on the island. Nor does this game talk about things that are in Camp Cretaceous, nor do either one of those talk about the program that the Troodon was in the live tour and vice versa. So the thing is, all these like side stories feel like they could be canon, but they all seem to have these intersecting concepts that also just don't intersect. You know what I mean? You're like, sort of like, why isn't this mentioned, or why don't we see this? And that's where Jurassic is, and this is its own argument, and this has nothing to do with the game itself, because it's really on Universal. But none of these ideas are intersecting. None of these ideas are tying together in a way that would really be cool if they began to tie in together. Even if like
it would help make them canon as well, because as you just said, Aftermath has velociraptors which aren't the Raptor Squad. So I mean, the kids would have encountered them at some point in Camp Cretaceous. So I guess there is some clashes there.
It's cool because they even put lore. Like, there's a reason why the raptors, quote unquote, look different. There's a reason why they're smaller. They're bred to look different, bred to look small, to be smaller. There are a lot of things like that, and I think it just would have been cool. Even the kids are like, when they're looking at the maps, they're like, "Oh, you got the NMS up there," something like that. They're like, "Oh yeah, it does exist." Just little elements that tie it all together would have gone so far, especially again when a lot of these, Dr. Wu's secret experiments, and like you keep hearing about all these Dr. Wu secret experiments, but there seems to be like no synergy between them on each of these sub programs. So that's something I think Jurassic could do a better job on. But again, that's on Universal. That's on Universal probably not having a dedicated story team for Jurassic. So
we're all ready for that. We're here for that.
They've got these guidelines, but not necessarily. They got these guidelines to make sure that all these side stories stay within the canon, but they don't necessarily have anybody helping connecting the tissue of all these new side stories. All these side stories, a lot
of them now, and they have a lot, and they're all a lot of fun, right? So,
and they all feel like they could be canon until you start realizing that they're crossing over similar territory, but not like referencing these other side stories. Like there's no intersecting that's happening. That's where it starts to go. Like, but is it canon, or is it soft canon?
I feel like in terms of VR, the Trespasser video game would work so well on that.
I think I don't know if you guys
stacking boxes.
Yeah, it could work. I mean, they just announced today that they're doing
San
Andreas on Oculus.
I just saw that on your feed.
And they just released Resident Evil, which was also PlayStation 2. Was that game, because that's actually the one Jurassic Park game I've never played. I know you guys talk about it all the time. I need to play Trespasser. Was that PlayStation 1 or 2?
It wasn't. PC. It was PC only. I don't even know if they had plans. The guy who developed it, the head developer or whatever, he actually helped. He was part of the invention team for the Xbox. So I don't know if Trespasser influenced the Xbox in any way, but either way, it was PC only. But that,
unfortunately,
I feel like Trespasser, the way it plays, you almost play it as if you're in a VR headset. The way it's so violent and it feels like you're controlling VR.
It very much does. It's like you're trying to do VR controls, but like on a mouse and keyboard that weren't like optimized properly. Because even your hand is independent of your looking. So you'll move your hand around like this, and it's independent of the screen. But it's very VR like, where you feel like your looking should be to the headset, and then your hand is tied. It feels very VR like, but it's like. It's weird, but it would actually work way better in VR. Unfortunately, I don't see them ever doing it
because it's very navigate. Like you can go back on yourself, but it's not like fully open world. So you really do have to follow a sort of designated path, and because it's such an old game, very early to do that kind of open world thing that they were attempting. The dinosaur encounters are very much like you walk past a point and then it begins and then you leave the area kind of thing. It is very like, oh, I'm going to look at this dinosaur and then you move on. Except for the raptors, which is just like
they're like jumping.
You
But
need to play it, man.
unfortunately, the
I
game
do.
was very expensive. The game was very expensive to make, and then the studio had a release date that it forced on the studio. The studio wasn't done with the game. The game released in an unpolished, broken state, so I don't ever see that game coming back because it was a very expensive failure for the studio. There was a lot that it did right, and there's a lot to be proud of in that game, but it released in an unpolished state, and it was sort of like this hugely failed experiment that cost a lot of money. Unfortunately, is ultimately what it came down to. So I just don't see them ever like revisiting it. Unfortunately,
no, it would have to be a fan studio or independent studio that like tries to port that game to VR or something. Could you imagine? I know that like through Trescom, they've made the game more playable, as Derek said when we last spoke with him. They make the game more playable, they make it more on, but I'm pretty sure they have all the original source code and everything. So I think there must be a way to kind of develop that game for VR. Maybe that's something that the company you're working with.
You never know. There you go.
I mean, it's one of those things that would be cool. It would be. I mean, I would love to see Universal there's amazing Richard Attenborough voiceover in that game, and there's some really cool concepts, and I think that with some slight reworking of some of the more outdated sort of 90s era, like the health bar being on like the cleavage tattoo, I think if you put it to an arm tattoo, things like that, maybe make it a little less like 90s like boys club
Lara
with
Croft.
some of those concepts. I think that game could be modernized, and I could see it even being embraced, but it's just one of those things that I don't think anybody that worked on that is still at Universal. So it's like one of those things, like it was like a black sheep back then, and now it's just nobody even knows about it. So it just, I would be Universal doesn't have a gaming division. I would be shocked if it got uncovered. Everyone that worked on it, all the studios that worked on it are defunct. So I just don't know how that would ever come back. It just makes
sense for you, Brent, to bring it back.
Yeah,
take the source code, work with Trescom, and get it up and get it on VR. I think that would. I think it would be great.
But I hear Chris saying for sure. I think I'm in. I got to play it first though. But I always wanted to.
Experience.
And I have listened to the John Hammond dialogue. That stuff's amazing. But
so good. Just before we go, I have to ask. After Dominion, we obviously don't know exactly what Dominion's about, but after Dominion, after the big third franchise movie, what do you want from the Jurassic franchise?
That's a good question. I mean, I just don't want to have to wait 14 years to have something new come out. I think that's a big thing. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, obviously the stuff Disney's doing with Disney Plus is amazing. I don't want like Universal's app though. That's my issue. Like it would be cool if they did like a show, and I would then have the app if they went that route. But I don't know. I love movies, man. So I'm okay with more films. But would you want it to be most likely?
Would you want it to be like Jurassic World 4, or would you want it to be something smaller?
I think I'm with you guys. Like unique stories taking place. I mean, it's a Jurassic World now, theoretically, after these movies, right? So different, unique dinosaur experiences. I'm all for the start of the novels where dinosaurs are just running through towns and they don't know what's happening and that kind of stuff. So I think that's where I would want to go.
I think it's a reasonable place. I think it makes sense as well after 3 massive blockbusters. Pull it back a bit, wait a few years, and do some nice smaller stories set within that universe, continue the story, and maybe some threads that could lead to another trilogy that's bigger and more blockbustery could be laid out in these smaller movies, and it allows the
take the time to get there.
Take that time to get there and pull back a bit and see like what's the logical route. Where would we actually go? Because when it's at a crunch and they have to kind of we have to write a new blockbuster movie. It might not be the most logical method of doing it. And as we discussed before, Fallen Kingdom kind of makes Jurassic World irrelevant and vice versa. And it kind of like it feels like were they rushing? I don't know. But I hope I'm there with you. Hopefully some smaller stories and a lot more video games as well. I think it's time for,
exactly.
Time for some big AAA titles.
We're all ready for it. It's been long enough.
Brent, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's really great to speak to you, and hopefully it's the first of many InGeneral podcasts with you on.
Yeah, you guys ever want me to join again? I'm always happy to talk dinosaurs. Especially Jurassic Park ones.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know all the
especially
names. Exactly, definitely the T-Rex. And I
Yeah.
do want to say, I know Assis isn't here, but I wanted to bring this up just because I have the opportunity. His love for Jurassic Park 3 over the years has definitely inspired me to love that movie more. So, and your guys too. So, I just
So
want to
true.
say I very much appreciate that.
Assis.
Yes, exactly, and it's top 3 now because of your guys' podcast. So yeah,
That's so funny. That is so funny. That's so good though. I mean, it's true. Like JP3, I liked it, but it was a cease that made me really like. You know what? It is a good. It's fun. It's good. It's got some love. I love the Kirby's. That's awesome. I'll pass that on to him. Brent, great speaking with you, man. And
good
speak
talking,
to you soon, buddy.
Yes, great guys. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Take care, guys.
Thank you so much for Brent for joining us. That was great to speak to you. Finally, something we genuinely have been planning since Jurassic World came out and he revealed he was in it. We've been planning to get him on the pod and just wires crossed over the years. But finally, great to have him on. And Chris,
really hard scheduling the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Like we've interviewed some great people, but how long have we been doing this?
Yeah, no, well, like the funny thing, it's especially when we started. I'm in the East Coast U.S. You were overseas in Guernsey.
I was on the GMT timeline.
Yeah, Assis was in Canada. We were all scattered across all these different time zones. At least now you and I are only 3 hours apart. And
yes, and we're very used to calling each other every morning.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I'm the one in the future now rather than you. So
it must feel weird.
It is, but it's become a lot easier to make it work.
Yes, it really has. And there is some frequency with the podcast. But as always, let us know in the comments what you want to hear with the podcast. Let us know in the comments what you think of the podcast. And let us know what you think of the music as well. That's done by our very own Caleb Burnett. Mr. Caleb himself conducts the music for this podcast. But yeah, I think we are good to say goodbye, Chris.
Yeah. Like we said earlier, stay tuned. Jurassic Outpost is out. Jurassic World Evolution 2.
Jurassic Outpost is out soon.
Jurassic World Evolution 2 is out soon. We think that Camp Cretaceous news will be dropping soon. Hopefully Dominion later this month. The Jurassic Park Ultimate Visual History book is due out this month. We'll have things to talk about there. We have a lot of cool lore content coming. We have a interview with John Bell coming soon.
And don't forget to check out our interview with David Silver as well, toy designer, toy sculptor, man who has worked on the Hasbro 2009 toy line. It's a very exciting conversation we had with him, revealed a lot about that line, and is obviously working on his own Beast of the Mesozoic line, which has done really well with Kickstarter. And if you're a fan of dinosaur collectibles and accuracy within the paleo sculpting community, that is one to check out because his sculpts are awesome. And he is a really nice guy, and we had a really great conversation with him, so check it out. And I believe, you and Derek and Caleb interviewed John Bell.
Yeah, no, that it was a really good interview. And I just want to say with David, I really like the insight. So even if, say, you're not into the realistic dinosaur figures, but you're into collecting the Amber collection or whatnot, David gives a lot of great insight on the process and maybe why sometimes the Amber collection figures aren't as detailed as some of the other competitors on the market. And it really, boils down to traditional sculpting versus digital sculpting. But he gives a lot of insight and a lot of great pointers for how lines like that could evolve and become their fullest. But anyhow, it's a great interview. But yeah, no, we talked to John Bell, which was a lot of fun. John Bell, if you're not familiar, he just did a ton of concept work on the original Jurassic Park and is the man behind the iconic vehicles and a lot more.
And from the Lost World too. And he worked on JP3, but only briefly really before it.
Just briefly, and basically everything he worked on was actually cut from the film. It was mainly that motorcycle chase sequence, which is
those motorbikes are awesome. The ones he designed,
I know,
so classic Jurassic.
They feel like they're just motorbikes that would have been on Isla Nublar or Isla Sorna in this case. Maybe they're manufactured in Sorna, I don't know. But it's a bummer that those were cut. I would love to see this come back. And then he also worked on Jurassic World for a brief amount of time. It was
when it was
on the
still called Jurassic Park 4.
And it was on the Jaffa Silver script, but it was mainly like the plot was basically the same. But we talk a lot about the visual aesthetic that he brought into that, and personally, I'm a bit bummed that Jurassic World doesn't look more like the artwork that he cooked up, and we kind of gush over it, and then we talk about if he'd ever want to work on a Jurassic film or TV show again. And I think basically the gist of it is we need to get John Bell back, and I think he's game. But anyhow, check out that interview. Once it's out, it's definitely worth it.
Hell yeah, I'm excited to listen to that. And we will continue to have more news. Check out the Jurassic Outpost YouTube channel. We have some great content on that. As Chris mentioned, there's some lore coming. Check out JurassicOutpost.com for more. And as always, thank you so much for listening to the InGeneral podcast. Leave a comment down below and let us know what you think we should do for episode 100. Because if nobody tells us, we just won't do an episode. And then we'll just jump to 101. So, yeah.
You know what's funny is episode 100, the way that this is timing out, it might end up just being like a Dominion trailer and like Camp Cretaceous season 4 overview, which sort of feels celebratory anyhow. So it might just align. The stars might align that it's just a big news drop. But yeah, we should still do something special, something atypical for 100.
Absolutely. I mean, we always used to talk about, we never did it. We never even did our commentaries for the movies, which I don't know why anyone will listen to them now, but maybe we should do a reading of the 2004 John Sayles script.
I think instead of a commentary, we should just do like a live stream where we're watching it synced up, and we can let people join in and watch it with us, and, we can have guest people, but it can be like in the commentary, so we can have a little bit of like trash talking, a little bit of just gushing over it, and a little bit of maybe insight.
Maybe it should be a live stream of Fallen Kingdom.
No, I feel like we should definitely just do Jurassic Park, The Lost World, JP3. We can work our way through all of them, but let's start with Fallen Kingdom.
Whew. Yeah, that'll be a wild one.
Let's start on a positive note and then keep that positive momentum going.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, thanks for joining me, man. And as always, Brent, thank you so much for joining. Yeah, guys, thank you for listening to the InGeneral podcast. And thank you so much.
Until next time.
Goodbye and stuff.
Good.